Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney at Myrick O'Connell, but this, of course, is not about my day job. It's about my friends Frank and Mary, whose goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if that's Westboro, that means right here, they never want to leave. So the question is, who are the people that you should know if you identify with Frank and Mary? Who are the people you should know? What are the programs you should know about if you want to just stay right here in Westboro, just like forever and live happily ever after? So my co-host, Shelby Marshall, who has been on the Board of Selectmen, just it seems like forever now, but for a long time, finds all these great guests because there are so many things happening in Westboro and so many great guests that she just keeps finding them. And although this guest has coming back because our ratings were so high when he came the last time that we decided to invite him back for another show. So Shelby, whom do we have today?
Hi, Arthur. Good morning. Great to see you. I'm really excited to welcome back Sharad Mehta. He's been on, this is his third show now with us. Actually, I think technically maybe fourth because, well, it doesn't really matter, but third show. And we were joking as we were warming up here that it's like science with Sharad. So, but he's brought us some really interesting programs before as it really relates to energy and climate change and sort of distilling complex concepts down so that we can all sort of understand how we can play a role in impacting the world around us. And so as it is Earth Week and there's been cleanup going all around, totally appropriate and perfect that Sharad is our guest today. So welcome back.
Thank you, Shelby. Let me share my screen.
So Sharad, you definitely have the most colorful slides of any of the people we have had on. I just want to let you know, we really appreciate the quality of these, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'm trying to do is bring science down to a level that we can all understand and in a very practical way. What can we apply it and what can we do with it? So this is related to the environment. So this is part 3 of the environment series. And I had begun this series in part 1, started with the topics of climate change and global warming, and explained why there is this urgent need to limit the rise of the average global temperature by less than 1.5 degrees by the year 2050. And for solutions, I had offered some suggestions of the adoption of some of the newer technologies that are available that can not only reduce our carbon footprint or carbon emissions, but they also save money because of the higher efficiencies that they offer. Specifically, I had mentioned electricity from zero emission sources, and solar systems was part of it. There is wind and other resources as well. Then we have heat pumps for heating and cooling of homes. And finally, we have electric vehicles for transportation. Electric vehicles can help reduce our emissions by about 30%. From where we are right now. So today we are going to focus on EVs, electric vehicles. Before I go forward, this presentation is being provided as a social service. I am not representing the interests of any enterprise, organization, or institution, and certainly not any commercial interests. So let's look at electric vehicles today. We're going to do 3 things. First, we are going to look under the hood, so to speak, of an electric vehicle, see what it's made up of. Second, we're going to look at affordability of electric vehicles today. And in this context, we're going to look at the total cost of ownership of electric vehicles and compare them with gasoline. And lastly, we are going to look at what to consider when we are thinking of switching from gasoline to from electric vehicle, gasoline to electric vehicles. So there are a number of acronyms that show up, and this is what they are. EV stand for electric vehicles. BEV stand for battery electric vehicles. PHEV stands for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which have an engine and a battery. And ICE stands for internal combustion engine, which includes all vehicles that run on fossil fuels. So let's take a look inside electric vehicles. This is a diagram that shows the basic parts. Down at the bottom here, we have the battery pack, and the passenger cabin is above that, which is not shown in this figure. Then we have a motor, an electric motor, which takes energy from the battery and drives the car, drives the wheels. And we have a transmission, which transmits torque from the battery, from the motor to the wheels, and also has differential action. The inner wheels need to go slower than the outer wheels when it's turning, so that action still needs to be taken care of. And then we have a charge port, an onboard charger, and we have some electronics to control the motor and other things. And we have a small radiator, mostly to control the temperature of the battery. And that's all there is to it. This is an electric vehicle. Now, the first thing that stands out is that the engine has been replaced with an electric motor here. Now, that has a huge impact. So let's see what happens with that. In a modern gasoline car today, there are about 30 to 35,000 components. You compare that with an electric vehicle, and it has only 11,000 components. Now, that's a striking difference. And why is that? So it turns out that of these 35,000 components, about 11,000 of them belong to the engine. And then we have a transmission, which is more complicated because it needs multi-gear, first gear, second gear, third gear, and so on. So it has many parts, and all of these components go away. And so we're left with 1/3 the number of components that we had in a traditional gasoline car. Now that offers real opportunities for reducing the price of the vehicles, and also to improve the reliability because there are fewer parts. The other thing to consider is the efficiency. So when we put a gallon of gasoline in a car, it turns out that only about 60%, 35 to 40% of it does real work for us that drives the vehicle. The other 60 to 65% gets wasted as heat and is basically sent to the radiator, which cools it off. So just think about it. You put about $10 worth of gas in your car, and $6 is basically going waste. And you're getting only $4 worth of work out of it. And that happens for every gallon of gas that we put in our cars.
Sharad, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
Does that percentage change? So if you drive, a large SUV and you get, 17 miles to the gallon and it's a V6, does that percentage change if you're driving a smaller car that gets 30 miles to the gallon, or is that ratio pretty much the same regardless?
Well, it'll change some. I mean, it'll go between, 35 to 40%, that range, but it's not that much. It really gets driven more by the, physics of the system. And also, some of these vehicles have been optimized. There's a lot of work done on engines, so they've tried to reduce these.
Right. Well, that's what's amazing to me is, you see that and you think about how far, obviously, in, the the technology and the efficiency and all of that of vehicles, traditional ICE vehicles today. And we're still at this ratio. It's kind of mind-boggling. Go ahead. Thank
And
you.
to compare that with the motor, which has efficiencies of 98, 99%. So there you are, another huge opportunity for, reducing wastage. So the other thing to look at is when we buy a gallon of gas, where does the money go? What is the breakup? So that's shown on the right-hand side. So about in 2018 prices, about half of it goes to get the crude oil, so pulling it out of the ground, transporting it from, let's say, the Middle East to the US, and so forth. Then some goes to federal taxes, some goes for refining and profits, and some of it goes for distribution and marketing, and that's really the breakup. Now, I'm not talking about the trillions of dollars that have been spent in the last 3 wars that US has been had to engage in, and all of them had oil as the underlying factor. And then there is environmental damage. There is the cost of that to properties and such, and then there's the healthcare costs of the damage to environment. So all these factors are costs that we are bearing, whether in the front end or through some other means. We are paying for all this. And here's an opportunity to get away, just bypass all this and take advantage of newer, more efficient technologies and, save some money in the process. So now let's look at the total cost of ownership. This is really coming down to, okay, I understand electric vehicles are good to have. Can I afford it? Let's look at that. So I'm going to break down the total cost of ownership and compare electric vehicles with gasoline vehicles. We can really break down this into 3 buckets. The first is the purchase price. The second is the maintenance cost, and third is fuel cost. So let's look at each one of these buckets. These are a couple of slides directly from Consumer Reports. It shows a spattering of the sale price of a few different vehicles in different classes. And if you compare electric vehicles, the ones in yellow are electric vehicles highlighted. You compare electric vehicles in price with their counterparts in the same categories like crossovers, luxury sedans, and so on. The prices are comparable. They're not outrageously high. They're on the higher side, but they're still comparable. Now, when you look at cars that are in the range of $30,000 or more, most cases you will find that the prices are in family, as I'm showing here. And the depreciation is also in family. Typically, cars lose about 30% of their value within the first 3 years. And electric vehicles are the same. And in some cases, they are actually better. There are cases where the depreciation is only 10%. But that could be because there is a high demand and a low supply for certain types of vehicles, more than the others. Now, when you come down to the lower prices, let's say from $15,000 to $30,000 range, there are some differences. Well, first of all, there are much fewer cars available, electric vehicles available. Their depreciations are also higher. They range anywhere from 35 to 50% for the electric vehicles in this range. But let me go on and present the full cost of ownership picture to you, and then we can come back and consider this again. So one thing to remember is when we buy an electric vehicle, a new electric vehicle, we get a substantial tax rebate from the federal government. And that's about $7,500 at present. And it's a rebate you get when you file your annual tax return the next year. It's a rebate that you get. So that substantially helps electric vehicles being competitive with today's prices of gasoline cars. The other factor is the batteries. Now, the batteries are the most expensive component of an electric vehicle, and battery prices have been coming down exponentially. This is a chart that shows from 2010 down. So what used to cost $1,000 per unit in battery capacity now costs only a couple of $100. And by 2030, it is expected to go down even less, like less than $100. So that is a good trend that is helping from the consumer's point of view. The other piece
Excuse me, Sharad, it's interesting because I recall that when we were talking about solar energy and the cost and over a period of time,
Yeah.
we had sort of a similar discussion, and that is as we have more experience, more use, the technology changes, more investments, that a unit cost continues to trend downward, thus making it kind of more, certainly more affordable in a mass market.
Correct. So this is the same trend. And apart from the efficiency improvements, they're wringing out the production costs from the system and things like that that are leading to this trend. So the other piece is electric vehicles have very good warranties that are offered by manufacturers. They typically have 7 or 8 years warranty up to 120,000 miles. So when you buy a car, you don't have to worry about batteries for the next 7 or 8 years. This is much better than a corresponding gasoline vehicle. Very few of them are offering this kind of warranty on their engines. So we talked about purchase price, the factors that affect it. Now let's take a look at fuel costs. So now in fuel costs, what you see a term that shows up in the stickers of electric vehicles is MPGE. And what is that? So it's miles per gallon equivalent. Now, electric cars don't use gasoline. So what does miles per gallon really mean in this context? So this has been set up just to make a comparison, analogous comparison between electric and gasoline cars. So what they're saying is, if you have if you take a gallon of gasoline and see how much energy is stored in it, and look at the equivalent energy in electricity in terms of units. So 1 gallon has about 33 units worth of electricity worth of energy. And then you see how much energy is being consumed by an electric vehicle for driving 1 mile as an example. And you take the ratio of the two, that's here, and that gives you the miles per gallon. And typically you'll find that these numbers are much higher than gasoline cars. And so for a gallon of gasoline, you'll see miles per gallon as 20 to 40 miles at best. And when you see electric vehicles, you'll see 120 miles to the same corresponding gallon. So that is 3 to 4 times advantage that you get. And that comes from this electric efficiency of motors compared to the efficiency of engines that I was talking about earlier. So this leads to substantial cost saving opportunities when it comes to the total cost of ownership. So this is shown here. This is all taken from Consumer Reports, by the way. There are studies after studies that have been done, and I've just taken an example. And there are many, many such available. And so this is showing the lifetime fuel cost of an electric vehicle compared to a gasoline vehicle. And you see here that on average for a car, there'll be savings of up to $8,500. For SUVs, it's $11,000, and for pickups, it's even more, $14,000. So that's a substantial saving that you're getting because of the new and improved efficiencies of the new technologies. next, let's look at maintenance. So I've divided the maintenance items into two categories. One is common, which means that whether we have an electric car or a gas car, these maintenance items are going to remain. For example, tires, everything related to tires, air cabin filters, windshield wipers, insurance, excise and taxes, all these maintenance costs are common whether you have electric or gas vehicle. On the left side, you have the costs, maintenance costs of the engine. So here we have engine oil, engine coolant, antifreeze, spark plugs, timing belts, water pumps, and God forbid if we have an engine check light on. So now all of these go away because we don't have an engine anymore. And now when it comes to engine,
I don't know why engine check light on immediately sort of felt like your mother called, you need to call her back. I don't know. It sort of has sort of like one of those, oh no, what's wrong with my engine? Uh-oh. Why did my mom call and she didn't actually leave a message?
That's right. But you know, having said that, batteries can also fail. So you know, we have to consider that as well. But battery prices are going down and they have a very high warranty, and engine prices are not. They're at least stable and they don't have that kind of warranty. So there is that advantage that batteries will have over time, batteries will come out ahead in this scenario.
Sharad, could you just give me, I know you talked about the fact that the batteries last for 7 or 8 years, but can you just give us an order of magnitude in today's prices of how much a replacement battery would cost?
So they don't last 7 or 8 years, by the way. That is the warranty. Like a vehicle has a warranty of 50,000 miles. It doesn't last 50,000 miles. Right. Vehicles can go 200,000 miles. So typically, I have not heard of anybody replacing their batteries yet. I mean, they are expected to have a life of 10 to 15 years, I would say. And the replacement cost, it depends on the size of the vehicle, of course, and it could be, $10,000, I would say, something in that range. But as I was saying, that is today. So if you buy a car today, you're covered for warranty for the next 7 years. So 7 years from now, that would come down to $5,000 or $4,000.
Right. So, and whatever that is, you're kind of equating it to what you spent on the cost of maintaining an internal combustion vehicle for engine for that amount of time, right?
Now I'm comparing it to replacing an engine alone, not
right.
maintaining it. That's just the replacement of it.
Right.
The worst case scenario. It's like Shelby was saying, mother's phone call.
Right.
That's all right. So what this is showing is the comparison of the lifetime maintenance costs between electric vehicles here and gasoline vehicles. And you can see that this is about half. So there is a substantial saving opportunity here in the maintenance cost. All right, so, and this really shows for different classes of vehicles, overall, what is the savings when you compare a lifetime cost of electric vehicles with plug-in hybrid. And you can see it's all over the range. It goes from anywhere from $6,000 to $17,000 in total range. So this is, so what happens here is, let's say you are, the way to look at the purchase of an electric vehicle is a little bit different than gas cars. What you look at is not just the sticker price or the monthly payment that you would owe to the bank, but you also consider the maintenance and fuel costs and look at the total cost of ownership. And so let's say you have a payment of, say, $300 a month that's coming out for the car that you picked. Now, if you look at the overall cost of the electric vehicle, you may actually be able to afford, let's say a $350 a month payment, because the front end is higher, but on the back end, you have these substantial savings, and you can actually use that to get into a better car. So that is the, opportunity that one should consider when we are considering the replacement of our vehicle. So the last thing is, when do we switch? What factors go into it when we are considering switching to the electric vehicles? So two things. One is, in general, when we buy a car, we own it for a long period of time. In general, people keep their cars from 10 to 15 years. So in the next 30 years, let's say up to 2050, we are only going to get 1 or 2 chances at most to make this switch. And that's why it becomes very important to understand and prepare well and be ready for the replacement of our vehicle when the opportunity arrives, to figure out whether or not an electric car would make sense and when would it make sense for us to get into. So that's an important, you get only a few opportunities to do this. That's one factor. And the other factor is charging. So an electric vehicle, most people, 80% of the time, people who own cars, electric vehicles, are charging at home. And it takes about 6 to 8 hours of charging to get a range of about 250 to 350 miles. And it takes a 240 volt line, a plug, which is similar to what you have in your house for a washer dryer. And you plug it in and it takes that much time to get that range. Now, if you're living in an apartment or don't have access to charging at home, then there are supercharging stations. And they take anywhere from a half hour to an hour to give you a charge for about the same range, 250 to 300 miles. And so what needs to be considered is, if you don't have charging at home, then where is the charger located or charging stations located? Is it between your home and office? Or when you're dropping off your kids to do activities, can you take some time to go to a charging station and charge the vehicle, and maybe able to do it once or twice a week? These are factors that need to be taken into account when you're considering the switch from gas. So bottom line is, there are a lot of efficiency gains to be taken advantage of, and the first opportunity that one gets, it is really the electric vehicles are at a place where it is worth making the switch, so that you can not only help the environment but also take advantage of the efficiencies and save some money in the process. And so this is the summary of the pros and cons. Again, low cost per mile, price of owning the vehicle, reduced emissions, zero emissions actually. It has very good acceleration. They're much better in acceleration than gas vehicles. You have long-term warranty on powertrain, including battery, and it requires little maintenance and has longevity. On the other hand, that it does have a higher initial cost, and we discussed it in some detail, how we should consider the total cost of ownership. Then we have limited number of charging stations, which is also temporary because charging stations are growing really fast. And we have to consider where our power sources are coming from. Because if we are using electricity from oil or coal-fired plants, we're really not helping the environment. And then special charging considerations for condo and apartment residents needs to be taken into account. And although rare, batteries may need replacement, but this is so rare and warranties are good. So, but it still should be taken into consideration when we are considering this switch. So bottom line, zero emission transportation is here at our doorstep. And if the electric power is used from sustainable sources, we really can make a substantial impact on our share of the greenhouse gas emissions, and help the environment and save money at the same time. Well, that's all.
So Sharad, thank you so much. A couple quick thoughts come to mind. One is I want to remind our viewers, and this is sort of part of a continuum. We are headed toward here, not only in Westboro, but in our state, in our country. And for folks that are interested in what we're doing here specifically in Westboro, you can go to the town's website, go to Sustainable Westboro, and under there you'll see the Climate Action Plan, which is a great document that is being circulated to lots of different civic organizations for input and feedback. The Board of Selectmen, of course, have seen it, and lots of other boards are weighing in. So it's intended to be, once sort of, officially approved, it's still in draft because that feedback is being solicited. It's intended to be a roadmap that aligns Westboro's work with the region's work, with the state's work, and so on and so forth. And so things like, just really simple example, charging stations. So we have some charging stations now up at the golf course. But as an example, the select board just heard about site plans for property off of Computer Drive. And one of the things we provided was, or we were excited to see, is that they're doing all the conduit ready to go for solar charging stations. So these are just going to be kind of part of our natural discussion. And, it's going to make, businesses, I think, will be able to attract, whether it's retail traffic or their employers, their employees will be expecting it. So I think I think it's this natural evolution that we're all sort of being, in a good way, being forced to. The other thing I'll just note is that I was watching TV the other night, and General Motors had a pretty lengthy commercial just about kind of where they're going. And it was like a man standing on that battery pack in a car. It was kind of like, this is the future of General Motors. So, we never would have seen that 3 years ago on primetime TV. So we are getting there. I love the visual about, 2 cars in, approximately, until 2050. So it's coming. So I think folks need to start planning in terms of their solar sources and power sources, as well as transportation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Arthur.
And it was, and I just want to add, I was, as a layman, I was totally surprised to realize that it actually is more affordable now.
Right.
When you take into account everything. It isn't the future, it is more affordable now.
That's right.
As long as you can find a charger, it's a great alternative. So thank you so much,
You're
Sharad. Thank you, Shelby. We'll look forward to the 4th episode of this
Right.
really wonderful series. Folks, we hope you enjoyed this. Shelby pointed you to the website if you need more information. And thank you very much for watching this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. Thank you.